listening to. Start here, free on Apple Podcasts.
Hey, come on. Look at this is crazy.
An investigation now underway after this tense scene in Los Angeles County. Sheriff's deputies drawing their handguns on two black teens, another deputy rushing in with a rifle, detaining the boys who say they were actually the victims of the crime. Multiple witnesses say the boys were attacked by a homeless man and then defended themselves with a skateboard, prompting numerous 911 calls.
And everybody here in the parking lot called. Yeah, she called. I called.
The sheriff's department says it's been unable to locate the homeless man who they described as a possible victim. Breaking news, the pick is in.
I introduce the next president of the United States, Joe Biden.
Joe Biden choosing Kamala Harris, the California senator and former presidential primary opponent, who would now become the first woman to be vice president, the first black vice president, and the highest-ranking Indian American in U.S. history if elected. Our political team on what went into the big decision, as well as President Trump's response. Vaccine race. Russia claiming a win, saying they're the first to have a vaccine. Putin says one of his daughters has already received it. A reality check tonight. Meanwhile, here in the U.S., the growing concern over rising rates of child infections, just as many wonder if they'll be heading back to the classroom. Canceling the season, the two powerhouse conferences postponing their college football seasons. And the legacy of Aunt Jemima, why the family of the woman behind it isn't at all happy with the decision to make over the iconic breakfast brand.
She's just not a character that I really want her legacy to be told, that this is a real person and this is her recipe.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Lindsay Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. We begin with the history-making announcement today and the race for the White House. Presumptive Democratic candidate Joe Biden revealing his choice for VP. After weeks of speculation, Senator Kamala Harris has now officially been tapped as his running mate. The two had some tense moments on the debate stage last fall, but they're now joining forces in their effort to defeat President Trump. The campaign sharing this photo of Biden at his home in Delaware today in a Zoom chat with Harris. Only the third female VP nominee and the first black American, first Asian American. So what will her selection mean for the battle for the White House? Mary Bruce leads us off.
Tonight, for the first time in our nation's history, a black woman is on the ticket. After weeks of speculation, Joe Biden this afternoon over video chat informing Senator Kamala Harris of his historic decision. Biden then tweeting the news, "I have the great honor to announce that I've picked Kamala Harris, a fearless fighter for the little guy and one of the country's finest public servants, as my running mate." Harris responding, "Joe Biden can unify the American people because he spent his life fighting for us. And as president, he'll build an America that lives up to our ideals. I'm honored to join him as our party's nominee for vice president and do what it takes to make him our commander-in-chief." Biden has said he was looking for someone he could trust to be the last person in the room giving him advice.
Choosing the vice president is whether or not the person is simpatico with me in terms of where I want to take the country.
Biden and Harris have a personal family connection, first meeting through Biden's late son, Beau, when he and Harris were both state attorneys general. 4 years later, after Beau Biden died from brain cancer, Harris saying, "I still miss him." But Harris would become a rival.
You know, there was a little girl in California who was part of the second class to integrate her public schools. And she was bused to school every day. And that little girl was me.
At the first primary debate, taking the former vice president to task for working with segregationist senators to oppose school busing policies in the 1970s.
It's a mischaracterization of my position across the board. I did not praise racist. That is not true.
Do you agree today that you were wrong to oppose busing in America then?
No,
do you agree?
I did not oppose busing in America. What I opposed is busing ordered by the Department of Education. That's what I opposed.
Harris later reportedly said that was all politics. Biden clearly willing to look past it. At a press conference just weeks ago, one of the first public signs Biden was leaning towards Harris. Photographers getting a glimpse of his talking points about Harris, right on top, quote, "Do not hold grudges." In this moment of racial reckoning and after black voters helped save his candidacy, Biden was under intense pressure to pick a black woman. Tonight, the other women reacting. Former UN Ambassador Susan Rice calling Harris a tenacious and trailblazing leader. Senator Elizabeth Warren saying Harris has been unafraid and an inspiration to millions of women who see themselves in her. And from Congresswoman Val Demings, a powerful reflection, saying to see a black woman nominated for the first time reaffirms my faith that in America there is a place for every person to succeed, no matter who they are or where they come from. Hillary Clinton weighing in with this message to another woman making history. I'm thrilled to welcome Kamala Harris to a historic Democratic ticket. She's already proven herself to be an incredible public servant and leader, and I know she'll be a strong partner to Joe Biden. Please join me in having her back and getting her elected. And President Obama tonight writing Joe Biden nailed this decision. By choosing Senator Kamala Harris as America's next vice president, he's underscored his own judgment and character. Even before Biden announced his decision, the Trump campaign warned they would try to paint Biden's pick as a radical. Just moments ago, the president himself attacking Harris.
Plus, she was very, very nasty to one of the reasons that surprised me. She was probably nastier than even Pocahontas to Joe Biden. She was very disrespectful to Joe Biden, and it's hard to pick somebody that's that disrespectful. When she said things during the debates, during the Democrat primary debates, that were horrible about Sleepy Joe, and I would think that he wouldn't have picked.
But it was Biden earlier this year who said just what he would be looking for in a nominee.
It's incredibly presumptuous for me at this stage to be talking about a running mate. I'll get killed if I get specific. But let me tell you what, rather than who is, I'd very much like my administration to look like the country, like Barack and our administration look like. Black, brown, women, men, gay, straight, across the board, to look like the country. As vice president, I think it would be wonderful to have a woman or a person of color as vice president. But the most important thing I've learned from my relationship with Barack, I call him Barack, not president because I don't want to confuse him with the president. At any rate, one of the things I learned is that no president in the 21st century can handle the job all by themselves. It's just too much that lands on your plate. So you've got to be prepared to turn over significant responsibility, as the president did with me on matters relating to a whole range of issues, and turn it over and run it from beginning to end.
Mary Bruce joins us now. And Mary, there were certainly a lot of women under consideration, in contention. So in the end, what put Senator Harris over the top?
Well, for Joe Biden, this really came down to a personal decision. This was about a personal connection, in many ways a gut feeling. He said all along that he was looking for someone to be his Joe Biden, someone that he could have a relationship with like he had with former President Obama. In many ways, this was a gut feeling. And of course, they had that personal connection going all the way back to Harris's relationship with Beau Biden. And of course, ultimately, Joe Biden looking for someone who can be ready on day one.
And of course, the Democratic convention is next week. But where will we see Biden and Harris together before then?
Lindsay, tomorrow we will get a first glimpse at the Harris-Biden ticket together. They are set to deliver remarks in Biden's hometown in Delaware.
Mary Bruce, thanks so much. The daughter of immigrants, her dad from Jamaica, her mother from India, Kamala Harris is a groundbreaker and has been making history well before this moment. Kamala Harris was born in Oakland, California in October 1964. The daughter of immigrants, her dad from Jamaica, her mother from India. It was her mother who she credits for her determination.
Our mother was fierce in her belief that you will be judged based on your actions, not your words. Our mother also, she was all of 5 feet tall. But if you ever met her, you would have probably thought she was 7 to 10 feet tall.
Growing up with her younger sister Maya, Harris was bused across Berkeley, California for school in the 1960s. She graduated from Howard University and the University of California. And at 55, she's no stranger to making history. She was the first African-American woman to be elected district attorney in San Francisco and the first woman to serve as California's attorney general.
Take this obligation through.
She became a senator in 2016, known for her prosecutorial style at Senate hearings. Today, she's also the first black woman, the first Asian American woman on a presidential ticket. And let's go now live to Rachel Scott, who's outside of Harris's home in Washington. So set the scene for us, Rachel. What's it there like right now?
Lindsay, listen, the frenzy and the anticipation has been building for hours, and it has resulted with so many people turning out right here at her apartment. Just take a look. You can see the TV crews, the still photographers. You have some voters now that have come out in the hours following this announcement. We've actually seen the crowd grow hour after hour following Biden's announcement that Senator Harris is going to be his running mate. And, you know, I've had an opportunity to talk with some of the people that are gathered out here, and so many of them actually didn't even support Senator Harris in the Democratic primary. They actually didn't even support Biden either, but they say this moment, right, seeing this representation on the ticket, having this ticket reflect and represent the diversity of America, especially right now, and this national reckoning on race is just so important, Lindsay.
So perhaps energizing the base just as the Biden campaign is hoping for. You also cover the Trump campaign. What are we hearing from the president and his campaign on Harris's selection?
Yeah, well, the president responded today himself, calling Senator Harris mean, nasty, and disrespectful. But you know what's interesting here is that President Trump actually donated to Senator Harris's campaign. And so tonight, campaign officials are saying that that kind of ends the racism argument there. Vice President Mike Pence also responded to the news, welcoming her into the race, but saying that he's looking forward to that big debate. But, you know, I've been talking to Trump campaign officials for weeks leading up to this announcement. They were ready for this as well. They had the ads ready to go. They're already out on Senator Harris. But regardless, they told me their strategy was clear. Regardless of who Biden picked, they're going to paint the VP nominee as someone far to the left, as someone a radical version of the party, even if Biden's policies and even Senator Harris's policies haven't moved in that direction, Lindsay.
Thanks so much, Rachel. And for more analysis, we are joined now by ABC News political director Rick Klein. So, Rick, Harris was seen as a favorite for this selection. What makes her such a formidable pick?
Well, Lindsay, she may look like the obvious choice, but she wasn't the inevitable choice, and how she acquitted herself during this process, I think, is instructive. Look, Kamala Harris is tough. She is dedicated. She came up through the ranks of cutthroat politics in California, and, of course, now serving as a senator for that state, and she ran for president already. So a lot of the vetting happened on the national stage. She was tested. She had those testy debate moments with Joe Biden himself, and I think critically, she understands what the media scrutiny looks like, and she understands what Donald Trump is going to come to bring to her.
And Rachel, of course, discussed that attack ad that the Trump campaign has already put out. What are some of the weaknesses that they're going to try to exploit, and how likely are their attacks to stick?
Yeah, they're going to look at that debate moment. They're going to look at lots of moments like that. They're also going to try to paint her as a far-left progressive, someone that would be a vehicle for riding Joe Biden into the White House to bring a bunch of crazy liberal ideas in their view. But I'll tell you, she is not the #1 draft pick of the Republican side, despite what President Trump said. Of course, as Rachel mentioned, that the fact that President Trump himself was giving money to Kamala Harris, even into Barack Obama's second term, is something that continues. And frankly, a lot of the other women on the list would have been easier to pigeonhole than Kamala Harris. She is a lot more moderate than some of the other people that were being under consideration, and I think she's a lot more formidable as a presence on the campaign trail. And
Senator Elizabeth Warren, she's tweeted her reaction saying she can't wait to see Kamala Harris on the debate stage with Vice President Mike Pence. And that really is where a vice presidential pick can make their biggest mark. So what does Harris bring to the debate table?
She brings a lifetime of experience and, of course, the spotlight of those dozen or so presidential debates when she was going toe-to-toe with Joe Biden, among others. And we've seen her in moments like the Brett Kavanaugh hearings, where she has been a lightning rod for a lot of critiques from the right and someone that brought the argument directly, that prosecutor's mind. I think she's very much looking forward to the ability to go toe-to-toe with Mike Pence. She believes a lot, very strongly, in what she has to say, and she's lived so many of the issues that are now at the forefront of the American debate.
And finally, this has been a long selection process with the convention starting up just next week. So what's to come out of this as far as Biden's decision-making process and how his campaign and the party are running this so far?
Yeah, it's so interesting, Lindsay, because this was a relatively leak-free operation, almost without any drama on behalf of the Biden team. And the fact that they were able to keep this as disciplined, as buttoned down as they did, that the vice president was able to make these deliberations outside of the public eye. I'll tell you, a lot of Democrats feel like that says something very positive about Joe Biden. Even if he landed where a lot of folks thought he'd get all along, he got a lot out of the process as well, because you have a whole army of a new generation of progressive leaders, many of them diverse, who are now national names. People like Karen Bass and Val Demings, Tammy Duckworth, who are a lot better known on the national stage, almost exclusively as a result of this sweepstakes.
Rick Klein, thanks so much for your insight as always.
Thank you, Lindsay.
And as we all know, our way of life, eating at restaurants, visiting relatives, young and old, sending your children to school without fear, can only really happen when there is a COVID vaccine. Here in the United States, the government has launched Operation Warp Speed. Some of the biggest drug makers have been working feverishly to try to find a safe treatment. But how fast is too fast? Well, Russia, they are now declaring that they are the first in the world to approve a vaccine. Putin even claims that his daughter has taken it. Experts here, though, are skeptical, calling the trial too small and too short. But what if it really works? Our Ian Panel leads us off with the dramatic development.
Tonight, Russia claiming a major victory with the world's first approved coronavirus vaccine. President Vladimir Putin even saying one of his daughters has been given the inoculation.
После второго укола, второй прививки тоже температура немного поднялась, ну и все сошло потом на нет. Чувствует себя хорошо и титры высокие.
Kirill Dmitriev, head of the Russian government fund backing the vaccine, told us they're confident it works even though they haven't completed phase 3 trials.
Its efficiency has been tested. 100% of the people developed immunity.
But many scientists in Russia and around the world say it simply hasn't been properly tested, with less than 100 people actually receiving the vaccine so far. Russia choosing to go ahead before completing that crucial final phase 3 trial that's used to show if a vaccine will work safely in a large population. They only lined up 2,000 people for that final step, which is just getting underway. Compare that to the tens of thousands now being tested with vaccines being developed by Moderna, Pfizer and Oxford, all of which are further along in trials than Russia. Russians say their vaccine was created so quickly because it's based on a previously developed Russian Ebola vaccine.
Once you understand the mechanics for how it works and you see the results of clinical studies, I think many people will be convinced.
The Russians are dubbing the vaccine Sputnik, a tribute to the Soviet era when Russia launched a successful orbital satellite in 1957. It's now being used to tout Russian success once more in this promo. Even though Russia will start to administer the vaccine to millions, there's some backlash. A Russian Association for Pharmaceutical Companies published an open letter this week appealing for Russia to delay approval, saying there hasn't been enough tests and that it could be dangerous. Putin says phase 3 trials will still be underway in a handful of countries, including Brazil, which has one of the worst outbreaks in the world. US health experts aren't won over. Dr. Fauci shared his reaction exclusively with National Geographic.
I hope that the Russians have actually definitively proven that the vaccine is safe and effective. I seriously doubt that they've done that. People say, why aren't the Americans doing that? Well, because we have a way of doing things in this country that we care about safety and we care about efficacy.
And Ian Panel joins us now. So, Ian, when is the Russian government going to start rolling out this vaccine, and will they track how it works as more people use it?
Well, look, this is a really interesting thing, is that they're only just starting the phase 3 trials. Now, we've heard about phase 3. This is the crucial stage. Moderna, the Oxford projects, they're all involved in heavy phase 3 testing at the moment, involving tens of thousands of people. The Russians are only just about starting to do that now, even though they've kind of declared victory that they've already got a vaccine. They're saying that they're going to roll it out to key frontline workers, that's medics and teachers, possibly by the end of this month. But large-scale mass vaccination in Russia, they say, will begin in October.
Ian Panel, thanks so much. Of the now more than 20 million confirmed cases, a reminder that a quarter of those cases are from right here in the United States. And as children begin to go back to school, the American Academy of Pediatrics reports nearly 180,000 cases in children in the last 4 weeks. That's up 90% in just 1 month. Marcus Moore has the latest on the virus's grip here at home.
A revealing look tonight at the struggle so many families are facing. The New York Times inside Houston Methodist Hospital in July, where 60% of the COVID patients are Latino.
Your mom and your brother bought you this rosary.
Rosary beads resting in the hand of 30-year-old Ivan Sanchez, who for weeks has been on a ventilator.
Just so you know that your family and everyone's praying for you to have a speedy recovery.
Today, Florida marked its deadliest day yet, 277 lives lost. Cases are declining in 23 states, but there's also concern about the potential for spread in schools. Across Cherokee County, Georgia, at least 925 students and staff are quarantined after 60 people tested positive. Masks required for teachers, but only recommended for students. When schools reopened last week, parents were hopeful.
So many of us were desperately wanting our kids to be face-to-face. I feel 100% safe.
It was just 24 hours ago, Dr. Anthony Fauci was asked about those images of school children in packed hallways, many without masks. Dr. Fauci telling David, in his opinion, there should be universal wearing of masks.
There should be universal wearing of masks. When I see sites like that, it is disturbing to me.
In Texas, debate over reopening classrooms.
Please go by science.
Middle school teacher Rebecca Asher quitting at this school board meeting.
I respectfully offer you my resignation, for I need to take care of my family. I just didn't feel the district had adequate plans to keep both students and teachers safe.
Across the country, nearly 180,000 new COVID cases reported in children in just the last 4 weeks, an increase of 90%. 6-year-old Jaden Coulter of Philadelphia was severely sickened by that rare multi-inflammatory syndrome.
They had to put breathing tubes down his throat, with IVs coming from his neck, his arms. They came in the room every 3 minutes. It just was a lot.
Jaden is now recovering, but he'll be going back to school online.
I was worried about the whole school, wanting my child to go to school, but now I'm second guessing, like, yeah, maybe virtual is not that bad.
Lindsay, tonight the CDC has come out with new guidelines and guidance for school districts as it relates to masks. They have brought out the warning that bullying could come out as a result of these masks in classrooms, and that school districts should have a plan in place to address those issues. Also reminding parents and students not to touch the outside of the masks and to wash their hands often. Lindsay.
Our thanks to you, Marcus. And next tonight to the major headline in the sports world. 2 of the largest college sports conferences calling off their fall seasons, including college football, due to concerns over COVID-19. So will others now follow suit? Kaylee Hartung files this report.
Tonight, the college football world upended. 2 of the most powerful conferences canceling the fall season for all sports. The Big Ten and Pac-12 making the painstaking decision.
There's too much uncertainty at this point in time in our country.
The backlash against canceling has been growing. The president weighing in just moments ago.
They're going to be out there playing football, and they'll be able to fight it off, and hopefully it won't bother them one bit. Most of them will never get it, statistically. So college football, get out there and play football. People want to see it.
The other 3 major conferences now faced with their own decisions. At LSU, the defending national champions are taking measures to protect their players, using thermal body cameras for temperature checks, UV lights, and upgrades to helmets. Head coach Ed Ogeron says safety is his top priority, but wants to play in front of his fans.
But I expect at least 50% of the fans to be there.
50%?
I would expect that.
That's 50,000 people.
Yeah.
Lindsay, the college football world is divided. Those conferences that have canceled their fall seasons, they say they hope to play in the spring, but that is a really difficult scenario for people to imagine. Meanwhile, here at LSU and throughout the Southeastern Conference, they are still scheduled to play just 6.5 weeks from now. Lindsay.
Our thanks to Kaylee for that. And for more on the college football season and the battle against COVID-19, let's bring in Republican Governor Tate Reeves of Mississippi, home to both, of course, Mississippi State and Ole Miss. Thanks so much for joining us tonight, Governor.
Thank you for having me on.
So when you announced a statewide mask mandate last week to try to get COVID cases under control, you cited wanting to see college football this fall as a reason, but the Big Ten raised concerns about medical risks for student athletes for postponing their season. So do you believe the SEC should still try to play this fall? And if so, do you feel that they could do it safely?
Yes, I absolutely believe that they can do it safely. Obviously, many of these student athletes have been on our college campuses for the last several months. They've been doing testing. They've gone through more protocols than the vast majority of people in society. And where we have to look at safety really is the number of people that are in the stands. I don't think we can have college football with 100% capacity at State and Ole Miss, 100,000 people in stands. But we could certainly do it under our current limits of 25% of capacity or something along those lines.
And the Big Ten says it hopes to play in the spring. Is there an economic argument for waiting to play until then? I mean, if fans are able to actually attend games, if we have a successful vaccine by then, possibly games bring in, of course, millions of dollars in economic activity. So why is it better to play this fall with few, if any, fans in the stands?
Well, we know we've got to mitigate risk, but we're never going to eliminate risk from this virus. Even if we were successful at getting a vaccine and we're able to do so very soon, there's still going to be risk to this virus, just like there are risks to the common flu and other risks that exist out there. What we've got to do is we've got to live in society in such a way that we mitigate those risks, we minimize those risks, but we've got to get back to a sense of normalcy. And with respect to college football, one of the most important things is the fact that those student athletes are so important, that football is important to them, and in many instances is the reason that they get the opportunity to attend college. And I'm worried about those student athletes.
And let's turn now to the state of the pandemic in Mississippi. The 7-day average of cases is down in your state, as are hospitalizations from recent highs in July. What needs to happen at this point to keep those cases declining? And does that include extending your statewide mask mandate beyond its current expiration next week?
Well, what needs to happen in Mississippi is that my fellow Mississippians need to continue to stay in the fight. We need to recognize that our enemy is not one another, but our enemy is the virus. And what we've seen in our state over the last 3 or 4 weeks is we've had tremendous participation by people throughout the state. We are wearing masks, we are social distancing, we're staying 6 feet apart, we're reducing the number of social gatherings that we're doing. If we will continue the course, we'll continue to see a significant decline in cases. 2 weeks ago, we had 1,342 cases. Today, we had less than half of that. Hospitalizations are stabilizing and in many instances declining, and we've just got to keep working hard to give ourselves an opportunity to beat this virus and continue with life in a more normal way.
And as far as the debate in Washington over economic stimulus, what does your state need most right now in order to help with both the economic recovery as well as the fight against the virus?
Well, we obviously need the Democrats in the House to actually show up and negotiate. The fact that they have a $3.4 trillion plan is just not realistic. That would bankrupt our country. The Republicans in the Senate that had offered $1 trillion is a much more realistic number, although even that number concerns those of us that are fiscally conservative. I'll give you an example. The Democrats in the House want $950 billion for state and local governments. If Mississippi were to get our fair share, let's say 1%, which is approximately our total population of the country, that would be $9.5 billion due Mississippi. Our entire general fund budget for 2 years is approximately that amount. That's the kind of numbers that they're talking about, and that's just totally unrealistic.
Now, the president has, of course, proposed executive action extending those expired unemployment benefits at $400 a week. But as you know, he's called for states to chip in $100 a week per recipient as part of that. Your state is already spending $22 million a week on unemployment benefits. So can Mississippi even afford to pick up this extra cost?
Well, we're doing the analysis on that right now. I will tell you, I commend President Trump because at least he took action. While the Democrats will not sit down and negotiate, the president took action, gave us an option. We are trying to determine if it's something that we can afford in our trust fund. We're not going to do anything that puts our taxpayers at risk of higher taxes in the future. But we also have 100,000 Mississippians still that are unemployed and that are depending on those additional benefits. And so we're working hard to find the right answer there. Not ready to make a final decision yet, but we hope to be able to do so soon.
Of course, some big news today with former Vice President Joe Biden selecting his running mate of Senator Kamala Harris. Your reaction to the news?
Former Attorney General, current United States Senator from the state of California. If you are curious as to where Joe Biden wants to take the National Democrat Party, all you got to do is look at Senator Harris's record. Obviously, a liberal from California, and I don't think that's what this country needs, and I certainly don't think that's what this country wants. And so it's an interesting choice, but certainly one that I think shows us where the former vice president wants to take the country.
Governor Tate Reeves of Mississippi, we thank you so much for your time. We appreciate you coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
And when we come back, the deadly storm system ripping roofs right off of buildings in the aftermath. 1 million left without power throughout the Midwest. The stay-at-home mom turned opposition leader forced to flee Belarus as the protests against the man many call Europe's last dictator continue. And the story behind Aunt Jemima. Pepsi announced that they would remove the iconic image in response to the social justice protests, but the descendants of the woman who helped launch the brand are now speaking out. Coming up, you'll hear why they're upset. Welcome back, everybody. With America in the midst of this so-called racial reckoning, untold stories are coming to light. Tonight, a look at a woman born into slavery who had gone to create a delicious recipe that many Americans have likely enjoyed. Her descendants hope in our country's push to right past wrongs that there's not an overcorrection and that her legacy can live on. Our Deborah Roberts reports.
Under the grass, it's barely noticeable, an unmarked grave covering what for nearly a century was an untold story of one of America's hidden figures.
I mean, who else has experienced slavery and then walked through all of the experiences of America? I mean, Jim Crow, segregation, lynchings.
You've probably never heard her name, but Nancy Green has likely been in your kitchen.
When my mom would prepare pancakes, that was just part of the whole experience of being in the household, is that you sat there and waited for the pancakes to be prepared so that you could get them, you know, hot off the griddle.
Right there on your pancake box.
As a kid, my mother always made those.
Everybody ate those pancakes.
Aunt Jemima pancakes without her face on the box was probably the one way that households were integrated.
Add some butter and syrup. You'll like 'em. Aunt Jemima. Perfect pancakes in 10 shakes.
The Aunt Jemima recipe, created by Nancy Green, and with it, the birth of the American pancake. Long before she pioneered that famous mix, Nancy Green was born into slavery in Montgomery County, Kentucky.
She was taken away from, she's not with her family, but she is learning to survive and use her God-given talent to still push forward and move forward, which is the story of most African-American people in the United States, that they used what they had to become what they were.
After the Civil War, Green moved to a divided Chicago, becoming a strong voice at Olivet Baptist Church, the oldest black congregation.
This church was noted for its work to shield those who had escaped slavery, who arrived here in Chicago, because there were many slave catchers in Chicago still pursuing people who were of African descent.
Sherry Williams lives in Chicago's Bronzeville neighborhood and has been shining a light on Nancy Green's story for more than a decade.
Most people have no idea who Nancy Green was. Why is that, do you think?
I believe because she is looked upon as a character, as opposed to a living, breathing individual.
Even connecting the dots for one of her descendants.
She actually opened up a box that we couldn't open.
Literally opened a box.
Marcus Hayes only recently learned about his family's past.
When I found out about it, to be honest, I was shocked and excited at the same time. Living in the United States, some African Americans, as you may know, it is hard for them to go that far back to get who they're connected to.
A history forged through a recipe Nancy Green first whipped up for the family she cooked and cared for.
It was so good that the boys would now tell everyone, hey, I have a caretaker who cooks for us, and she makes this amazing recipe, and she calls them flapjacks. And the milling company heard about it and knew that she was using their meal. They came and sought her out.
Just like that, Aunt Jemima was born. The big debut, the World's Fair at Chicago's Jackson Park back in 1893. Green selling 50,000 boxes of the now famous pancake mix.
She was the trusted face back then. You know, anybody who would look at an African-American woman cooking, they knew that they can trust her cooking.
And over all those years, ads for Aunt Jemima never mentioning Nancy Green.
She was a businesswoman. She created her own agency through what she did well as a storyteller, as a cook, as a nurse.
After Green died in 1923, other women became the living Aunt Jemima symbols, ambassadors hired by Quaker Oats to continue the legacy.
My great aunt, Lillian, she went to Dallas, Texas. She was discovered by Quaker Oats to be their spokesperson.
Vera Harris always heard the stories about Aunt Lillian and how she helped portray Aunt Jemima for decades.
When Quaker Oats would bring her back to Hawkins, Texas, that everybody would be real excited.
Aunt Lillian putting her small Texas community on the map.
Hawkins is the pancake capital of Texas, is that right?
Yes, it was declared the pancake capital of Texas because of my Aunt Lillian.
And unlike Nancy Green, Lillian Richard with her own headstone and a plaque in Hawkins. A pancake breakfast every year, too, educating others about the faces and names behind the Aunt Jemima brand and image.
I believe that some people may have thought that those faces were not real.
Real faces, real stories. Vera Harris and Marcus Hayes say they're now in danger of being erased. In June, PepsiCo, Quaker Oats' parent company, announced the Aunt Jemima brand would be phased out by the end of September.
When you learned that the Aunt Jemima face on this box, on the syrup, is likely to be phased out, what was your reaction?
I was taken aback. I was really shocked because I knew people didn't realize that those were real people. And, you know, to phase them out would kind of erase their history.
She's just not a character that I really want her legacy to be told, that this is a real person and this is her recipe. And she fed the world from her flapjacks.
There are people who are concerned right now about images, antiquated images, these minstrel images, which is why PepsiCo is thinking maybe it's time for that image to go. What's your feeling about that?
In no time ever have I heard anyone in my community say that this image was one that was derogatory. So I don't know where that sentiment is coming from.
In a statement to ABC News, Pepsi saying, "This is a sensitive matter that must be handled thoughtfully and with care. We respect the women who have contributed to our brand story and will approach our rebranding with their heritage in mind." The company committing $400 million to various causes to help with diversity, but so far, no direct contact with these two families.
Does PepsiCo owe anything to the descendants of these women?
I really think they do.
Pepsi not yet announcing the future of the longtime brand.
For so long, it was called Aunt Jemima pancakes. What should it be called then? Aunt Green's pancakes?
You know what? We don't know what it could be called long as she is somewhere in the mix. Call it Nancy Green. It's not about money. This is about the truth.
A truth and a story now being told no matter what happens with the brand.
Nancy, you're a storyteller, and now your story is being told again.
After a decade-long push, just this month, Sherry finally raised the money to give this trailblazer a proper headstone and marker she's long deserved. Headstone artist Mark Hunt not even aware of Nancy Green's past.
It's been an inspiration to me, and it's been an eye-opener for me. Yeah. Because a lot of people like myself didn't know what she did.
Carefully etching a face that will now be preserved for generations.
Oh my goodness. Oh my God. Oh my God. phenomenal.
Sherry getting her first look at the headstone she's fought so hard for.
I love it. Look at the details.
After lying beneath this grass in anonymity for nearly a century, a moment of hope in the middle of America's racial reckoning.
I'm pretty sure she's smiling down because it's so many people like my Aunt Lydia and others that contribute to make this country great, and people just didn't know. But if you get that story out, it will encourage other young women, black and white, to go out and do some great things.
And a recognition of the difficult work that lies ahead.
Let's fight for what we know to be right. Let's fight for a change. It is motivation to keep pushing. Although we may not be facing the things that she faced, we still have our own oppressions, if you will, our own challenges. And I think for me, it gives me the courage, it gives me the motivation to push forward and make sure that you do something great in this world, that you leave a mark, that people know about you.
Deborah Roberts, ABC News.
A fascinating and tasty nugget of history there. Our thanks to Deb. And we still have lots more to get to here on Prime. Our conversation with one of the co-authors of the bombshell book called Finding Freedom. Is the relationship between Prince William and Harry really on the rocks? Seattle's police chief stepping down, saying it's time after city officials vote to reduce staffing levels on the force. We'll take a look at the defund the police efforts there. But first, our tweet of the day. The final blockbuster is being transformed into an Airbnb. Welcome back, everybody. Now to the latest fallout from calls by some protesters to defund the police, now playing a part in the abrupt resignation of Seattle's police chief. Let's take a look by the numbers. Carmen Best is a 28-year veteran of the Seattle Police Department and the first black woman to lead it with her appointment back in 2018. But after Seattle City Council voted 7-1 Monday night for an immediate $4 million cut from this year's police budget, Best announced her retirement. The cuts could impact as many as 100 officers from Seattle's 1,400-member force, and also included salary cuts to 12 members of the police command, staff cuts to the SWAT team, and also eliminating the city's mounted patrol unit. However, the cuts fall far short of the 50% cut that some council members and Black Lives Matter protesters have advocated for, with calls to redirect funds to other public safety uses, a debate that will likely continue into next year's budget negotiations. And we still have lots to get to here on Prime. Next tonight, the family that's fighting for months to clear the name of their 8-year-old who was handcuffed and charged with a felony. They plan to sue. The young golfer you need to know about and why some are already comparing the team to legends in that sport. But first, a look at our top trending stories on abcnews.com. Presumptive Democratic candidate Joe Biden revealing his choice for VP. Senator Kamala Harris has now officially been tapped as his running mate.
Harris becomes the first woman of color on a major party ticket after dropping out of the presidential race.
Now, the two were fierce rivals early on in his campaign. Harris challenged Biden in one of the first debates over busing.
Last month, photographers picked up notes that Biden had handwritten before a press conference. Under the header of Kamala Harris, it read, "Do not hold grudges. Campaign with me and Jill. Talented. Great help to the campaign and great respect for her."
Coronavirus cases now top 5 million in the U.S. More than 340,000 of those cases are children.
Cases are now only increasing in 4 states. And today, Florida recorded a record high 276 new deaths. And in the state, nearly 43,000 children have tested positive for the virus.
The economy is recoverable. Education is recoverable. A lot of things you can recover from. What you can't recover from is death.
Russia's President Vladimir Putin claims his country has approved the world's first COVID-19 vaccine.
The news is being met with skepticism and caution from health experts inside and outside Russia.
There's been very little data and evidence published on this.
President Putin claiming it's passed all necessary testing. Russia essentially declaring victory before finishing its final stage 3 trials.
Protesters tonight are again trying to gather in Belarus's capital, Minsk. For the 3rd night running, police are responding with brutal force. The protesters hoping to make President Alexander Lukashenko step down. The key opposition candidate Svetlana Tikhanovskaya, though, has now left Belarus, implying she may have made the decision because of a threat to her family.
Знаете, не дай бог оказаться перед таким выбором, перед которым оказалась я.
Tonight, after that powerful line of thunderstorms tore across the Midwest, families is still in the dark. Meteorologists call these huge complexes of heat-fueled thunderstorms a derecho.
We're tracking a new tropical depression. It just formed in the Atlantic, and it could strengthen into the year's next named storm. The system is now getting better organized as it moves towards the Caribbean. It could potentially become Tropical Storm Josephine in the coming days. The good news for now, though, is the current track shows no U.S. impacts at the moment.
So you know where you're going? Okay. Jail. You're going into jail.
Police arresting a crime 8-year-old boy in school and taking him to jail. It happened at Gerald Adams Elementary School in Key West, Florida in 2018.
The thing about it is you made a mistake. Now it's time to learn from it and grow from it, right?
He was charged with felony battery. The charges were finally dropped 9 months later.
Our thanks to Eva. And we should point out that most of those masks were only tested once, and researchers say their study was designed mainly to show how simple it is to test the masks. Experts that we've consulted with say the key is to simply pick one you will actually wear, because something is certainly better than nothing. And turning now to a revealing new book about Meghan, Harry, and the royal family that's out today and claims to have a never-before-heard perspective on the life of the Duke and Duchess from their side of the story. Finding Freedom has insights from palace insiders and friends of the couple on some of the most explosive headlines surrounding the couple, including their departure from royal life and the rift between Harry, William, and their wives, which were formerly dubbed the Fab Four. The book's co-author and ABC News royal contributor Omid Scobie joins us now from London with more. So, Omid, Harry and Meghan's final event as working royals, that was March 31st, less than 2 years after their fairy tale wedding. For many, their departure seemed rather sudden, but your book lays out that this was brewing for quite some time. When is it your understanding that things started to go south?
Well, it's interesting because, of course, a lot of the narrative that's out there that Harry and Meghan blindsided the royal family, that perhaps it took everyone by surprise, but the signs were really there from very early on. It was sort of around the summer of last year that the couple really started to talk about what a different working model might look like for them. Of course, for months prior to that, they had made it very known within the households that they had grievances, that they had issues with the British press, that they felt sort of underprotected for, and wanted to be able to have the power to sort of have a louder voice to take on some of these difficulties and challenges themselves. But of course, often these fell on deaf ears, and so the situation we saw arise out of that was a very frustrated couple at the start of this year, where they put forward that very public manifesto to really detail how they wanted to work moving forward. Of course, that was a 50-50 working model, one that we called half in, half out, and it was rejected by the institution. And here we now have the couple living in California doing things exactly the way they want to do it.
And last year in the ITV documentary Harry and Meghan, An African Journey, that aired on ABC, Harry seemed to acknowledge a bit of a rift between him and his brother William. Is there a rift, would you say? And if so, what caused it? And did Kate and Meghan really have this tension between them as well?
Well, I would say rift is a very strong word, but there certainly is a distance between William and Harry that wasn't there before. Of course, in the book, we detail some of that. There were words when early on in Harry's relationship with Meghan, William almost sort of issued a caution to sort of perhaps slow down or think about the speed at which the relationship was progressing, which on its own sounds like sort of wholehearted brotherly advice. But you have to look at the background to that. Harry was aware of a lot of chatter within the institution, unkind comments being made about Meghan behind her back, and even amongst his own friendship circle, disparaging comments being made about Meghan. So I think that moment when William sat down with him, he needed to hear some voice of support rather than anyone casting any doubts. In terms of the relationship with the women, it's a shame that they often get blamed for being at the heart of these problems, because I think that actually they've sort of suffered because of the fractures between William and Harry. They've never really been able to create that close bond that I think that we all expected them to do. But there has also been a disappointment on Meghan's side from the conversations we've had with sources. She really wanted someone like Kate, a former newcomer, to be there for her during some of the more difficult times that she faced with the press, particularly during her pregnancy. And unfortunately, that didn't happen. And it's why we see very little relationship between the two women today.
And Omid, you've repeatedly stated that Harry and Meghan did not cooperate or interview for the book in any way. So what then makes this different from any other tell-all book about the royals? And why should anyone believe the claims in this biography?
I think what makes this book different is that the sourcing really was born out of a very unique situation. The people around Harry and Meghan in their lives that were so used to seeing them attacked regularly by sections of the media felt that those caricatures that were being portrayed in the media were so far from the friends or the colleagues or the people that they worked for were actually like. And I think that we were able to really create a relationship with many of these people to set the record straight on many stories that haven't really been dissected before. There have been all sorts of ridiculous tabloid tales about tears over a bridesmaid's fitting and drama over a tiara. And these are things that we've really not heard anything more from via the tabloids other than second, third or fourth-hand information. So for Carolyn and I, we really wanted to speak to the people who had been in the room during these moments to really get to the bottom of them.
And you, of course, have been following Meghan and Harry for quite some time and have seen them evolve through their time in the palace. Would you say that they've actually found freedom? And also, what's next for them?
Yeah, well, when we think about what freedom is, it's that freedom to express yourself and to use your voice in any way that you want. And it's very interesting to see the couple now talking very loudly about issues surrounding racial justice. And of course, Harry, even very recently, talking about systemic racism, something we've never heard him speak publicly about before. It's interesting that the royal family themselves have been very quiet on the matter of the Black Lives Movement. And I think that that often is because within the institution, issues like this are sometimes considered too political, which doesn't really make sense to me, but there we are. And I think that Harry and Meghan now have the freedom to really pursue the interests that drive them. And I think we'll see their philanthropic portfolio really benefit from that. They certainly seem in a very happy place right now.
Omid Scobie reporting in from London for us. Thanks so much for joining us and good luck with the book.
Thank you.
That book out today. We'll be right back. And finally tonight, some say she could just be the future of golf. Amari Avery has been playing the game since she was just 3 years old, and now in her teenage years, she's set to take the She's set to take the sports world by storm. Alex Prochet has this report.
We met Amari Avery as she was getting her playlist together, some Beyonce and Megan Thee Stallion. She's got a quiet voice, a warm smile, but there's nothing shy about her on the golf course. She plays to win, and she wins a lot.
Amari Avery.
At 16, the Riverside, California teen is already the most decorated African-American amateur golfer of all time.
What goes through your mind whenever you hear that, whenever you hear people talking about you in that manner?
It makes me proud. It's fulfilling, too. I mean, that I can own up to that.
She just finished competing at the U.S. Women's Amateur Championship. Pro golfer Vijay Singh says she has a perfect swing.
That's what you gotta do every single time.
Amari started playing when she was 3, introduced to the game by her dad, who noted similarities between her and golfing great Tiger Woods. The two have a similar family dynamic. They got their first hole-in-one at the same spot. They even share a birthday. Amari's dad nicknamed her Tigress.
You like the Tiger comparisons?
We're two very different people, but it's nice being compared to a bad guy.
Come here, come here. No more attitude, no more the rest of these hoes. You understand me?
At times, there's a lot of pressure. By age 8, she was featured in the documentary about her rising career, The Short Game, which shows some of that intensity. A young Amari, her father as her caddy, cursing and complaining about her performance.
Your dad took a considerable amount of heat after that documentary.
He did, but if you talk to him, he's grown more than anybody out of that entire documentary. We were close then, but we're even closer now.
This tournament, her father was right there, supportive from a distance as Amari's sister caddied. Amari and her family have an important decision coming up. Does she turn pro or compete at the college level like Tiger did? They believe she's in a place to do something great for this sport.
Being one of the very few African Americans out here, doing something in this sport is just being great.
Inspiration she finds in tennis legend Althea Gibson, who in 1963 was also the first black golfer in the LPGA.
She really defied all odds.
Your dad had this quote where he says, "I'm super proud of my daughter, but I can't let her know that until we get where we need to go." Do you know that he's super proud of you?
I do. He tries to hide his emotions towards, in that sense. But I know that he's very proud. He's the person that's always the most proud of me.
She reads that as clearly as she reads a golf course. Alex Perche, ABC News, Rockville, Maryland.
Our thanks to Alex. And Tigress, we're going to be keeping an eye out. Before we go tonight, our image of the day. Returning to that historic selection, Joe Biden's photographer tweeting this image of the former vice president in a Zoom chat with the woman he hopes will become his vice president. And that is our show for this hour. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. I'm Lindsay Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us, and good night.